Welcome to another round of Knocking It Around, Chasing a Cup and Underdog Soccer Podcast, doing a collaboration project. Matty, what's going on, man?
Not much. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well.
Doing great.
David, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying my Tuesday. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. I finally, I think, got through responding to 4,000 messages.
Yeah, my phone didn't stop buzzing Sunday, so.
Yeah, so appreciate Arthur Kogan putting that graphic together about our top 50 list, and ESPN for backing us with that. And we're here tonight. Wanted to talk about the list. David put together this list a couple months back and started breaking down. We wanted to look at the U20 and U17 teams. So in order to qualify for the U20 next year, you have to be born after January 1st, 2001. So I know a lot of people are asking about a bunch of 2000s, and yes, they are technically under the age of 20, but they don't qualify for the World Cup. So we really wanted to key in on some of the key players that would be bringing some value to the U17 and U19. So Matty, you wanna talk about the list?
Sure. So I guess the first thing we wanted to ask David, we're going to focus most of this on his brain since he was the one that kind of wrote this. And one of the questions that we saw a ton, and also a question of mine, is like, what specifically went into you making the decisions of where the players fell? And then part two of the question, like, what did the actual research look like? Was it game film? Was it you showing up to tournaments, playing, whatever it was? Not playing in the tournaments with these kids, but I know you played once long ago, not that long ago. So anyway, what did that whole process look like?
Yeah. So the process is scouring the internet, trying to find every single game imaginable for most of this list, because unlike at the pro levels, for a lot of these kids, you're not going to have the big in-depth stats when people look like goals added or G+. Those aren't going to be available. So it's trying to find these kids and evaluating them, especially in 4 different aspects of the game. So looking at their physical attributes, looking at their mental attributes, most importantly, looking at their technical, so skill in the ball. How good are you actually as a soccer player, as well as their tactical, looking at their IQ. Because those two, more often than not, went out in the end. So looking at those especially, and then looking at these guys and saying, okay, where does this kid measure in all 4 of these? Where does he rank among the players in his position among these 5 age groups? Where does he rank then among all the kids in general? And then kind of once you get into this list, it's, if I was drafting a team, which of these kids would I take? And which of these kids do I think is going to be the best long-term to take?
Okay.
Cool.
Did you, and one other thing, I guess, first, was there is it easier to find game film on American players or European players or players that are playing in different leagues?
American players are significantly easier.
Yeah.
So European players, you'll have to go to all kinds of different websites. Find the dark web, go to sites that don't even have any English, things like that. American players, now we're at a point where almost every single club in the United States has film that's up on YouTube or Vimeo or something like that for players. So it's really accessible. It's really easy to find film in these kids.
Yeah. So I wanted to stop. I was sitting back and reading all the comments the past couple days, and it was amazing how quickly people were just to be like, well, not a lot of people, but there were a couple people that got a little wild with your opinion based on them not knowing anything at all. So to those people out there, he's put in the time. He's watched a lot of film to make these decisions. So
the time put in is up there, upwards of 4,000 to 5,000 hours. So
easily.
That's pretty wild.
I think we spent 4,000 to 5,000 hours just talking about this list over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
When the list originally came out, like, I'll be the first to admit, like, I probably heard of 30 of them at the most, maybe 25, half of them. And I had to, I have my big Excel spreadsheet that I had to add half the guys' names to and do my own research and figure out who they are and where they played and everything else. So,
And David, when you were ranking people, you weren't saying like this Saturday, who's the first 11 you're going to put in there? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So for this, it's not a list based on, if I was choosing a team, would I take this kid immediately? Because if you look at the list, one of the kids that's in the top 5, Moses Nyman, I probably wouldn't take him immediately right now. Reason for that is he's 5'2", maybe, or 5'5", sorry about that, maybe 110 to 120. Not a big kid. Still needs to put on a little muscle, but his soccer IQ is phenomenal. His ability on the ball is incredible. And then his speed, also really good. Then his mentality, he's an aggressive kid. So say a year from now, 2 years from now, he puts on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. He's able to compete with those adults. That's a kid that's going to be in Europe immediately, looking at $10, $20 million sale. So it's not looking at those kids saying right now.
Right.
It's looking at it thinking, who do I think and who's these kids that they're going to be in the big leagues someday? Most of these kids I don't see staying in MLS. I see most of these kids progressing. The ones who I think have a ceiling in MLS, they're realistically not on this list. Unless I think this kid's going to be an all-star here, or this kid's really going to be changing the league. So
yeah, and you can't predict that future. Yeah. So what coach they land with, if they go over to Europe and their club situation and the depth chart, you're not really trying to predict that. You're really looking at who is the most skilled player in this age group.
Yeah. So and with that, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to change. There's kids that are going to be really talented, but they're not in a good club situation. I'm looking right at the Wolfsburg guys. There's going to be kids who might get hurt. So fans who followed youth soccer way back are going to remember Junior Flores, who is still to this day the best number 10 prospect not named Freddie Adu. He had some pretty bad injuries at Borussia Dortmund. He was on track to be the real first American to break out. He's 24 years old and no longer in pro soccer. That happens. There's going to be kids high in the list who are going to bust out like that. There's going to be kids lower in the list who are going to have that happen. You never really know. So generally, it's easier to predict it now. These kids are breaking in the pros instead of 6 years ago when you had 30 of the players in this list go to college. Instead, at 16, these kids are training with adults now. These kids are being evaluated by professional clubs instead of picking kids, letting the ODP system or hoping U.S. soccer scouts scrambles upon 1 or 2 kids. So I'm really hopeful about this group.
Yeah, I was watching The Last Dance, wrapping that up this past weekend, and just reminded that, people got selected ahead of Michael Jordan. There's no perfect process for predicting what someone is going to do with their club situation or how hard they'll push themselves. You're taking what you can see from the film and rating them based off of your experience and hours of watching film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's one of the problems that some Twitter users have seen with the players that were not on the list. Specifically talking about some guys that have a lot of MLS minutes yet aren't on the list. So if they're this high right now, why aren't they in the top 50? I think that's a confusing thing for some.
Yeah, there's going to be some kids who we have enough time where we can really evaluate him. It's no longer this kid's a professional prospect. This is a pro player. We're not seeing progression. It's going to come down to the club. It's also going to come down to the player. So most fans can probably pick out who we're talking about, but we'll go into detail later.
Yeah, Matty, you want to dive into a couple of the snubs and a couple of the omissions, the dual nets?
So I guess that's a perfect segue. Like 2 of the names that were brought up, and I'm sure a lot of people are. Or should I bring up those 2, or are those the snubs we're talking about?
So we'll go one by one. So
that's good.
The first one is the name that everyone and their mother brought up, Gianluca Boozio. And the reason for that is this kid has the most media hype behind him out of any other prospect in the list. The reason for that, this kid's getting looked at by European clubs. This kid has been on top 100 prospect lists 2-3 years ago. But this kid was a pro at 16 years old. The best performances he's put in at a pro where he's looked the most dangerous, he's attacked the hardest, or in 2018. That was 2,000 professional minutes ago. This kid isn't some kid who's just testing the waters in MLS. He's an experienced pro. This isn't someone where you're like, well, we hope he learns. He should know it by now. There's really no excuse. So when I look at him and think, where can he get better? It's a lot of room. And when you look at this kid's IQ, you look at the decision making he's having. When he's being groomed as a number 10, you want to look at the chances he's creating. And he's just not getting it done. And it's hard to say this kid's going to make it further when he's doing things like that. So this kid was originally, as a youth prospect, he was getting it done. He was an amazing player. He was creating goals left and right. He was taking on players. He was beating them. That's gone away.
Do you think he's grown in the 2 years that he's played in the MLS?
I really don't think he has.
Yeah.
He's the same player, which part of that isn't going to fall on him. Some of that's going to be the environment he's in. And we should have to take note of that. Eric Palmer Brown is at the same club. Eric Palmer Brown didn't improve at all there.
Yeah.
He had to leave before he really grew as a player. So those are some concerns we have to look at. The place you're at matters. You look at Andrew Carlton. This kid would have been a top 5 when he was 17. I wouldn't put him in the top 500 if he was eligible. So, just happens.
Yeah.
Who's another snub, I guess you got?
Yeah, so another big one is going to be George Bello. So this is a kid who almost made the list because when he was 16, 17, everyone was talking about this kid, and for good reason. George is an insane athlete. George has good skill on the ball. But George, his decision-making, his soccer IQ, it's really below par for what it should be. Tony Anand did a 45-minute conference and basically a TED Talk where he was explaining, here's George Bello, here's his strengths, here's his weaknesses. And he pointed out that his weaknesses were staying connected on defense, tracking runners, things like that. They're just as bad, if not worse, than it was 2 years ago for him. So he had a big injury that hurt. But physically, he hasn't changed much. It's his IQ and his decision-making has seen a regression. And that concern has kept him off this list too.
Right.
How about, who's the other name? Bryce Duke?
Yeah, so Bryce Duke was someone who barely just missed it too. He was a good player. I just wasn't sold yet because he just looked pretty average on the ball. He was just another one of those kids who was just pretty basic number 8. We had a couple other players like that. I was just looking at thinking, well, is he really going to progress that much? Now, 3 months later, this kid's under Bob Bradley. He's killing it. He's looking really good. So in a month when this list is updated, he's going to be finding himself on it.
And Davey, you left a couple other dual nats off, just not wanting to kind of get in the mix until we know that they're there. Leo was just a slip. Any other names that you think are noteworthy that were kind of on the edge, almost breaking into the top 50? We're right there in that group.
Yeah, so probably the biggest noteworthy name that I thought was right there but barely missed it, Nico Carrera was that one. He barely just missed off. And the reason for that was Bobby Pierre, who made number 50, was the only 2002 center back that made the U20s. That makes a difference. Bobby Pierre and Nico Carrera looked just as good as each other in the DA. Bobby Pierre also played in the U17 World Cup for Haiti and was pretty much one of the few reasons that his team wasn't picking the ball out of their goal 8 times a game. So Nico Carrera is one. Another kid who barely just missed the list was Ethan Johannes. So Ethan Johannes had all the tactical and technical abilities, but he was a little bit too slow for what I thought. He really wasn't able to move around the pitch as much as I would want to see. Fast forward 3 months, this kid's lost a bunch of weight. He's been grinding. He's looking fit. The videos he's had been posted. Kid's looking good. He's going to be on this list next time. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, should we dive into the 50 guys?
I think so.
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to run to 46. And then if David, if you have any noteworthy moments, we've got Bobby Pierre, who you just mentioned at 50, Marcelo Palomino, Chris Garcia, Cam Dunbar, and Thomas Roberts. Thomas Roberts was one of Chris Richards' sleepers that he mentioned. He told us, watch out for that kid. So I'll be interested what you have to say and what you think about Thomas.
Yeah, so each of these kids, the bottom 10 is essentially what I like to think is the danger zone. So I'm pretty high on these kids, but there's also a bunch of kids who could pass them up. So when I think of that, Bobby Pierre, he hasn't been getting as much USL minutes as I was thinking he would be at this point. I'm kind of concerned by why that is. There's other O2s in the Real Salt Lake Academy that are center backs getting minutes with Real Monarchs. Marcelo Palomino, this is a kid who I've raved about for years. He had some struggles in Europe, came back to Houston. With as good as this kid is, why isn't he even getting on the bench for TAP? So progression is a little bit slower. That's starting to really hit him when he's turning 19 this year. We look at Chris Garcia. So Chris is a player who's just on the edge of the list. Amazing 03, amazing winger, really athletic, really dynamic player. Has the skill, pretty good decision making. He struggles a little bit with inconsistency. But what really might bump Chris off the list isn't him. It's the environment he's in. Why isn't Real Salt Lake using any of their U20s in the first team? Why aren't they treating these new kids like they treated the 97s? What's happening there? So that's something I'm looking at. Then we go from there. We look at Cam Dunbar. This is a kid who was in the danger zone this kid showed out. LA Galaxy fans will remember. So if Jay Hernandez watches this, he'll probably be salty because this kid killed it in his first game.
Yeah.
And then he didn't play in the next two, and everyone was wondering where he is. But this kid's a really promising player. USL, he proved his worth. He came in there and dominated. He played Rio Grande Valley. He scored 2 goals, had an assist. Really showed out. Came into MLS. Again, was LA Galaxy's really only good attacker. Definitely might be moving up. And then we can look at a kid like Thomas Roberts after him. So Thomas has always been an underrated attacking mid. So he's not the most physical kid. So Brian Clyden has this thing where he calls kids snails. Thomas Roberts is that. Not athletic, but the kid has the IQ. He can hit passes that not many other kids in the pool can. He has the vision that many in the pool don't. So this kid, he's not gonna move off the list. He's gonna stay on. I still believe in this kid's potential. And the big thing is that he has Luchi Gonzalez as his coach. Luchi gives the youth minutes. Paxton Pomacall's not going to stay at FC Dallas for very long. When Paxton Pomacall leaves, maybe Jesus Ferreira leaves too. Thomas is going to be the winner. And then after a while, they're going to have to sell Thomas on because an 05 named Diego Hernandez is another 10 that's very deep in the academy. That kid's getting minutes with North Texas now. He's the only 05 to do that. So FC Dallas is going to develop Thomas Roberts in that first team, sell him off, move in the next kid. That's something I'm looking forward to.
All right. Next 5, starting at 45, we got Nelson Pierre from Philly. 44 is Kevin Paredes from DC United. 43, Brandon Craig from Philadelphia Union. Joe Scally from NYCFC is 42. Yeah. And 41 is Travian Salsa from Hamburg.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about numbers 45 and 43, the Philly kids. So Nelson Pierre and Brandon Craig are in the best academy that's not FC Dallas. They're pumping out tons of kids. They have a first team that gives them chances. They have a USL team that's averaging at an age of about 20 years old. These kids are getting chances. They're moving up quicker. They're developing really well. Nelson Pierre is one of the only 05s to really be playing up at that Philly academy. And he's not just playing up. He's excelling above his own age group. And he's doing really well. This kid's going to get a chance. That chance playing against older players, that matters. makes a big difference for kids. So when he's excelling, he's scoring goals against older players. He's really showing that he's one of these premier prospects. I've had talks with the inside Philly people who've also said, this kid's legit. This kid's going to be a first-team player at some point. So that moves him up. And then we look at Brandon Craig. So Brandon is a player who's played multiple positions. He started out as a right back. He's played as 6. Recently in the fall, he was moved to center back. Brandon just about on the ball has everything you'd want out of center back. He can hit the passes. He's courageous. He goes in the tackles hard. He's really good defending. What he lacks right now is he's pretty skinny. And he has acknowledged that. He's trying to change his diet to put on weight, put on muscle, get to that next level. This is a kid that once he does that, he's going to be an elite center back. So he makes this list because I see him going beyond MLS. He also has a European passport, so he can move to the Englands, the Spains, the Frances, and not have to deal with any non-EU rules, which makes a huge difference for projected players. That gives kids a lot more chances than it does for kids without those passports. So going from there, we look at a kid, Kevin Paredes. Some DC United fans are going to recognize this name. This is a kid who Ben Olsen actually played. Most fans know that Ben Olsen isn't exactly the biggest fan of playing youth. Kevin Paredes has gotten his chance. When he's been on for DC, he's done really well. He's fit right in. He's super technical. He's athletic. He has the IQ. This kid, when he's on the right wing, can cut it on his left, put a hell of a shot on target. This is someone we really like. This is a kid who's probably going to be moving up for the 2003s. He's an every game player for them. He's a difference maker. Just super talented kid. And then so we look at someone who might be moving down a little bit. This is going to be something that people might disagree with, but Joe Scally. When I look at Scally, this kid has been sold to Borussia Gladbach for $2 million. This could go up to $7 million. So when people look at NYC, I've seen people say they're not playing this kid because they don't have a reason to. They do. They can get $7 million out of this kid, which could fund their academy for an entire year. That's a big deal. But when this kid's in 02, he's 17, he's physically ready. He's not playing a minute in MLS. This is a kid who's going to move into Gladbach's first team in January. And the reason that he's not playing is he's not very good in the ball. He's struggling to take balls out of the air. He's struggling to dribble past players. He doesn't really use moves. He just hits the ball forward and then speeds past kids. When you get to those older age groups, that doesn't work. Defenders stop that every time unless you were lightning quick like Aubameyang. So this is a kid that I'm not sure he really makes it very far unless he goes to center back, because that's a position he can play because he has the size and the IQ.
Do you see Scally on this list next time you make it?
He's in danger, we'll put it like that. He's in the red zone. And then number 41, Travian Salsa. So Travian is at a club who is starting to pull the strings a little bit in funding. So for a kid like him, that's a big deal. And not in a bad way. This kid's going to get a chance at his first team. He's in the 2 Bundesliga. For a kid who's a 2001, perfectly fine. He has a chance to really get some good minutes. So this is a kid who's super athletic, really good attacking. Not a terrible defender. It could use some work, let's be honest, but it's not a deal breaker like some other players that I know. But this is a kid that he's out in Europe. He's grinding every day. He's in a hard training environment. He should be getting a chance with his first team. This is a kid who, for the U20s, would be a massive snub at left back if he didn't get chosen. So this is someone I'm really hopeful about this kid.
Very cool. And before we move on, I did want to mention, I think it's really cool with the 2 Union kids there, what Jim Curtin has done as well, right? Like,
yeah.
He is playing the kids on the senior team, and it's making a difference. I mean, their academy is incredible, but Jim is funneling them into the first team. And, Mark McKenzie, Brandon Aronson, I would not be shocked if they're on a plane here in the next couple of months and headed over to Europe. And that pipeline from the academy is just pumping kids up. And what are those, like 9-year-olds? Like I've seen videos of Philly Union, like 9-year-old academy, like balling out on YouTube.
U12s bullying teams in Brazil. But what Philly's doing is special.
Agreed.
Because they're showing, and Dallas is showing too, that these kids are good enough. If you put these kids on the field, they may have a little bit of an adjustment time. 2 to 3 games after a while, they're going to make a difference. Brendan Aronson is not a big kid, not a strong kid, has the mental ability, has the technical ability. He brought Philly Union to the semifinals of MLS's back.
Yep.
It's a big deal. This kid's getting looked at by every single team in Europe, it seems like. This is something that other teams should be looking at.
And Orlando, or not Orlando, who beat Philly?
Portland did.
Portland earned it, but up until that game, I thought Philly was one of the best, like, solid two-way teams, even with all those young kids on the pitch. They hung in there. So
you can.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
so we're moving on past the cutoff list to the 40. So we've got at 40 Kenan Hott from the New York Red Bulls. At 39, a name that many U.S. fans might know, Charlie Kellman in the South End over in England. We've got Reed Baker Whiting at Seattle. A name that I heard a lot that I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about, Cole Bassett at Colorado. I heard his name a lot leading into the season, and then it quieted in the tournament and since then. And then 36, we've got Federico Oliva at Atletico Madrid. Another fun name to hear South End and Atletico Madrid and Hamburg in this list of kids. It's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see. American kids are getting chances at bigger clubs. That's something that we shouldn't take for granted. It's special. So looking in this group, the first one up is Kenan Hott. This is probably my biggest regret in this list, and not for including him, but putting him so low. And the reason for that is this kid is built for the men's game. So my biggest question about this kid a couple months ago was his physicality. Obviously, as most kids who grow to be tall pretty quick, they're always pretty skinny. Kenny wasn't immune to that. He was a pretty wiry kid. Comes out of quarantine. Kid looked like he ate the old Kenny. Built kid, really big. But it's not just that I like about it. This kid can distribute. He can ping a ball 45, 50 yards on a dime. He can read the game really well. He can make defensive challenges and read the game. If there's a comparison that I think he can beat out, if people remember how Chris Durkin was, Kenny's similar, but the difference is Kenny's faster. And Kenny's also grittier defensively, which is huge. So this is a kid that I really think can go far. And not just this, though. Kenny is at New York Red Bulls, who have a good history developing players. But Kenny's putting the pressure on them because he has access to a Euro passport. If New York Red Bulls don't treat him like they should, he's gone. He's off to a European academy who will. And he's good enough for European academies, too. In the Red Bull system, Leipzig and Salzburg are going to be looking at this kid. And realistically, if he went to Salzburg, this is a kid with U.S. men's national team potential. So he's going to be higher up later on. So moving from there, from a kid who might go to Europe to a kid in Europe, Charlie Kellman. So the Wayne Rooney Jr., short, stocky forward who can bang in goals. So we don't have many of those for the youth national team system, which is kind of concerning. So the reason Charlie is so low is that I don't see him going much higher than the championship. And the reason for that is if you're going to be a really small center forward, you either got to be really fast or you got to bang in goals at a high rate. And the rate that he scored goals in the English League One is all right, but it's got to be a little bit better. We've got to see more production. And with some late rumors,
Let me cut you there real quick before you go on to the next guy. Let me ask you a question about Kelman. With the upcoming potential men's national team friendlies being in Europe, we've heard that there's one game against Wales and maybe another game. Assuming that roster is going to be all European guys, knowing that there's a very weak player pool at forward, you think he has any chance of being called up?
Not yet. And the reason for that is you're going to get 2 to 3 forwards in camp. And there's 3, maybe 4 forwards that come to mind with who should be getting a look. The first 2 is going to be Josh Sargent, obviously.
Yeah.
Eyes closed pick. Potentially should start for the team anyways. The other kid is going to be Nico Giocchini. Okay. He's playing in France, doing well. That's a kid who's earned his look. Potentially who's going to get invited to the men's national team camp in March. RIP to that. The other 2 guys, and they're a little further off, are going to be Bobby Wood. May his career rest in peace, but he's not so old that he shouldn't get a look. He's just really got to step it up. The other one's Andrija Novakovic. So Andrija's serviceable. He's at the right age. He should be entering his prime soon. He's not doing bad in the Italian second tier. The only downside is he's in the Italian second tier.
Yeah, I'm like, I know nothing about the Italian second division.
It's MLS is better.
Right. And there's, I hear people arguing for it all the time. And it's not like he's at they're mid-table team. It's not like they're about to be promoted. So I don't know. It's just hard for me to get behind that one.
He did amazing in the Eredivisie, which is the second division in the Netherlands.
He had, almost 20 goals that year? Or?
Yeah, I think he had 19.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good, but that's a pretty low level.
Yeah.
Most MLS teams would walk over those teams.
Yeah.
Like Jong Ajax, who is a pretty good team. MLS teams would probably overpower them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if we try like a Wea or Uli, as like coverage there rather than a true 9 at a worse club.
I didn't want to get us too far off track, but
sorry.
Nah, never a bad thing. Tim Wea is a dog.
Where were we?
Reed Baker Whiting. One of my favorite kids in the list. So think of all the things I said for Ken and Hot and double it for this kid. Exact same player. Physically, he's pretty built, but like Kenny a year ago, this kid's pretty skinny. But this is an 05 who made the list. And if you're going to be a 2005 in this list, just like Nelson Pierre, you have to really stand out amongst your age group. Yeah. This is someone where everywhere I see with guys who really know their stuff, guys like me who spend hours and days watching film, every single guy rates this kid. Seattle Sounders signed him to Tacoma Defiance already. He's an 05. He's getting minutes. And he looked at the part. He was playing against Sacramento Republic as a 15-year-old, playing against guys who are mostly 25.
Yeah.
He was fitting in. That's a big thing to look at. The only downside to Reed is that he has another 3 years in America before he can jump abroad because he doesn't have a European passport. But this is a kid who I think is phenomenal. That in maybe a couple updates, he's going to be higher up this list. He's a talent, people. You should be really watching for this kid. So going from there, a kid whose stock may be coming down a little bit, Cole Bassett. So Cole's always been someone that I've been pretty all right with. The biggest thing that I was looking for in MLS was growing on his form from last year. That's what I wanted to see. So he showed a little rough, really didn't show it. He was borderline bad in the games he played. But he's pretty good on the ball. He's not great, but he has the athletic components. This is a kid that, say he goes to a mid-level team in Germany, probably spends 1 to 2 years at their second team, then moves up to their first team. Just because he has the skill combined with the IQ and combined with the physicality. It's just I don't see him moving above maybe a lower Bundesliga, English championship level side. So, say in an update, if this kid really doesn't improve, he's going to be dropping some pegs. And then finally, a kid who's really special. So, Federico Oliva, or Fede Oliva. This kid's at Atletico Madrid. So, for every single USA fan, when you watch Gio Reyna, that's exactly how Federico plays. The exact same toolkit, just not as athletic. Doesn't quite have the power in his first step to drive by opponents with the ball. But this kid's killing it in Athletic Madrid. He's bagging goals. He's getting assists. He's getting it done. This is a kid for the U17 national team. Is a chiseled in stone like the Ten Commandments starter. So
he's not a dual net.
He is a dual net. I believe he has a Spanish passport. But he is representing the United States. He's even played for the USA against Spain U17 level. We got pancaked that game by Spain, but he played it. But this is a kid that's just he has the brain, he has the skill, he has the tenacity, the mentality. Kid gets after it. The only thing I wish he may be a little better at is just the athletic side. But this is a kid that realistically, a lower division La Liga team, he could do it. That's realistic for him. At the rate he's going, that's where he'll probably end up. That's not bad. For U.S. men's national team, with the wingers we have, it's not going to cut it. But he's still going to be a good pro. And that's all you need to do to make this list.
All right. On to 35, the next five. Evan Rotundo from Schalke, or should I say Schalke. Dante Seeley from FC Dallas at 34. 33 is Casey Walls from San Jose. Indiana Vasilev is at 32. I always get mixed up. Is he West Ham or he's Aston Villa?
He's Aston Villa.
Aston Villa.
Yeah. And then 31, Leo Sepulveda from Salamanca.
And little love to Wondolowski for backing his boy Casey Walls multiple times on Twitter, and definitely know Indiana upset some people seeing him so low as a Premier League player. You want to touch on that as you walk down this list?
Yeah, so as we go through, we're definitely going to talk about that. It's significant. So first up is Evan Rotundo. So this is a player that it was pretty hard to rank him this low, I'm going to be honest. And the reason for that is this kid's tactical sense is above almost every other player in this list. This kid can see plays happen 4 or 5 plays before it actually happens. He can make passes no one else can. He can play with both feet. This kid is playing up at the U19 level in the DA, and he's killing it. He's playing for the U17s, and he's still making an impact. He should start at the USA under 17s at the number 10. And the reason he was so low at first was I thought he was going to Borussia Dortmund at the time. I wasn't so sure he could make it there. And the reason why is because of the physicality, the athleticism. Evan's a tiny kid. There's no other way to say it. He's short and he's not very big. What worries me is I don't know how much bigger he's going to get. But he's at Schalke, who does pretty well with the physically developing players and developing that physical side, getting them ready. So that gets me hopeful. But this is a kid that's going to be either he's going to boom or he's going to be an MLS All-Star. And it all kind of depends upon how fast and strong he can get. Because if he can improve that, his skill in the ball, his vision, that's almost at a first-team level already. It's there. He just has to make sure that when he gets the ball playing against bigger, stronger players, he doesn't get pancaked every time.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny talking to Ethan, Johannes, and Tony Leone, and trying to get any name like who's the best scorer, Evan. Yeah. You know, who's the best on the ball, Evan. Who's the best attacking player, Evan. We couldn't get another name out of them. They were just ragging on it.
Didn't Brandon Craig and/or Caden Clark mention him as well?
Yeah, Brandon Craig did too. Yep. Evan's tactical and technical abilities. There's no other way to say it. It's special. He just has to develop the athletic side. I'm worried about it. I also think it's possible. If he can develop that, This kid's a top 10 Virgin top 5 talent. So it's just that. So when people look at it, the USA Portugal under 15 national team game is available on Facebook if you dig way deep in the CONCACAF page. And I think I'm the only person who's insane enough to do that. That game showed why you need to have the physical ability. Because if you can't escape from your defenders, you can't get that breakaway to get those touches in time, you're not going to make much of a difference. And they shut him down. So that's the only thing that worries me about it. If he can fix that, he's going to make it, and USA has our number 10. So moving from there, number 34, Dante Seeley. So Dante Seeley was a kid who at the end of 2019 erupted. So people always thought this kid was pretty highly rated at Dallas. At the youth levels, before end of 2019, he was just kind of there. He didn't really stand out. He didn't really show. It was like, this is why this kid's so hyped. And then all of that changes at the Nike Friendlies last year. This kid balled out. He was on fire. He was by far our best U17 attacker. Every single thing we did ran through him. He scored multiple goals. He got assists. He created against every team. The biggest thing that I wonder about him is consistency. Because if Dante wants to show up, he's going to be there. He's going to dominate the game. No question. But if he isn't there that night, he's going to be invisible. And he isn't just invisible at the national team level. He can be invisible at the DA. This kid scored 4 goals in a game at the DA showcase in December, and the next game didn't do a thing. That's where we draw the red flag at. So if he can be more consistent, he's going to jump up.
Piece that he's missing.
Yeah, it's not the technical, because he's fantastic. It's not the tactical. The kid knows the game. His dad was Scott Seeley, pro at FC Dallas. It's not the physical. This kid was pretty short growing up. Had probably a 5 to 6 inch growth spurt. Probably around 5'10", 6 foot now. Big kid. It's the mental. You have to show up game in, game out.
Yeah.
He hasn't yet. If he does, this is a kid who's potentially looking at 2026. This is a kid who would probably make 2030. 2022 is a stretch because he's an 03.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving there, another 03, Casey Walls. So I'd like to shout out Chris Wondolowski for coming at us. And rightfully so. Cade Cowell is probably a player who's getting considered for the list next time. But Casey Walls is one of the best center backs in his age group. This kid has the physicality of a center back. He's great defensively, great one-on-one. He commands his back line well. But when people look for USA and people look at how the USA wants to play, they're looking at our center back profiles. We want to see ball distributing center backs. Casey's one of the best ones at this. This kid can ping a ball 40 yards right to his forward every time, just like Brandon Craig, just like Chris Richards, just like John Brooks. So this kid's really one to watch. Matias Almeida has shown that if you're ready, you're going to get played. But center back does peak a little later. But Casey's going to get a shot. He's really good. He's already bounced above Jacob Akinyi in San Jose's eyes. It's a big deal. So this is a player to really watch. He's not going to break out for a while. But when he does, it's going to be really good. So bringing us to number 32, Indiana Vasilev. So this is a player who everyone was like, this kid's playing Premier League, yada, 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 yada. Rank this kid higher. Pump the brakes just a little bit. So playing in the Premier League, getting those, there's a big difference between playing for a mid to upper table team versus a team with minimal depth in the relegation zone who's getting slaughtered every game. And if they didn't have, what's his face?
I always get Jack Grealish and was it Jack Grealish?
Yeah, if this is a team that if Jack Grealish wasn't on this team, they're getting killed every game.
Yeah.
They're not scoring. And so when Indiana comes on, he's not touching the ball. He's not displaying technical proficiency. We need to see that from him. He has the IQ. He showed it when he was at the U17s in Brandenton when we played. He played as a number 8 there. He's moved to be more of a 10/winger-outright number 9. And I kind of see him as a number 9 going forward. But if you want to be higher up in this list, you have to show that you're good on the ball. That's one of the most basic considerations. He hasn't been able to do that yet. He's had like 5 touches in his last 3 games. You're going to need to do more. And unfortunately for Indy, Aston Villa's bottom teams never release game tape. I've combed the internet for hours trying to find it. It's not there. So I can't watch this kid. He's looking like he's going to get moved up, but it can't be much higher until he shows us that he deserves it. So moving from there, number 31, Leo Sepulveda. So Leo is the first kid from LA Galaxy that is a true Brian Cliven kid. So for those soccer fans who are listening, that's watch that Chivas USA, that Barca team that Cliven coached. Leo was one of the kids in that team. He's a really good left center back. When we look for kids who can play out of the back, he can distribute. He can keep that ball under pressure from the attackers. People watched Abubakar Keita in the U20 World Cup when the kid fumbled the ball or booted it long to another player every single time someone came within 5 yards of him. Leo's not going to do that. He's going to keep composed. He's going to keep it. This kid's been playing in a possession system since he was 10. The only downside to Leo's game is he goes a little too hard in the challenges. By that, I mean he's a yellow card machine. So he's going to break a defender, but sometimes he shouldn't break the defender or the attacker. That's the reason why I'm kind of worried. So Leo at some point will probably move into La Liga. He's good enough for it. He's on track. If he can fix his just wild, I'm going to break your leg tackles, he can get there. It's just he's got to stop being so risky.
I'm okay if he keeps a little bit of that.
Yeah. He's got to keep
a little nasty.
A little bit. You just have to learn when and right time.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You don't want to pull a Matty out.
Slap somebody in the face.
Right.
Yeah, there's a time and a place, and he hasn't learned that yet. Now, to be fair, that's why center backs take longer to break out. Yeah. But in the DA, he made some wild tackles that I was like, wow, that kid should be sent off. So that's a little bit of the concern with him. That's why he's not ranked higher.
Cool.
All right. So
35 through 31 was very interesting, but we're going to take it up a notch as we get into the top 30. Our guy, Caden Clark, New York Red Bulls. He's playing for New York Red Bulls too, which I just want to give a shout out. They do a great job of posting, a lot of video on Twitter. And I've just really, liked that, we have access to see him. He's had some gorgeous through balls the last couple of weeks, and that team has been fun to watch. Just blowing people up. What do you think of Caden?
Yeah, so Caden Clark, this is an interesting one because Barca AZ is pretty stingy with the film. There's not as much out there as you'd like. It's been kind of hard to watch where this kid would start in games because the games that were released, he would come off the bench when he was playing against older teams. So the person who really put this kid majorly on the map was Joey Antone. People may recognize him as USA Prospects on Twitter. This is a guy like me who spends hours on hours on hours combing through film, watching kids. When I made my breakdown the 2003 list, he specifically said, Caden Clark is the kid I'm moving up. Lock starter for the 03s as a number 10. When someone like that, this guy knows his stuff. That's going to make a big difference. That's how Caden Clark got included. If you're someone who I really trust with this, I'm going to take your word for it. So Caden Clark, he proved Joey right. He's coming to New York Red Bulls too. His first game was pretty iffy. It was also his first game playing against men instead of bullying kids in the DA. But now he's come in. When people look at Brendan Aronson, they look at a kid who's super technical, super high IQ, really good, quick touches, fast. Caden Clark takes it to another level. The only downside to Caden Clark's game is just like Brendan Aronson's. And what I mean is that he's a total shank in the box. And he can hit that pass. He can hit the killer pass. Caden tries it more than Brendan does. He's more risky with it. He just, when you want him to finish off plays and score, that's where he's still lacking. There's also, he's 17. He's going to work on it. Brendan's 20. So Caden's a kid that also has a European passport. He can leave New York Red Bulls too whenever he wants. When he was on our show, pretty obvious that his sights weren't set in MLS.
Yeah. I specifically asked him because I think his birthday's in like the spring. He turns 18, and I was like, what's going to happen around your 18th birthday? And he had this big, giant grin on his face. Like,
that's good. So he possesses a Polish passport. He doesn't even have to wait.
Right.
So the second Red Bull Leipzig or Red Bull Salzburg, which is probably why he chose New York Red Bulls, to be honest, the second they said, we're going to take you up, he's gone. And at the rate this kid's playing, every single game, every person who watches the Red Bulls looks at this kid and they're like, oh, wow, this kid's really good. This kid's special. And then they hear that he's 17. And they're like, oh, that's a talent. So Caden Clark's going to be moving into the top 20 in the next list. So this is a big-time player, folks. Really excited.
I'm very excited about him.
So he's not going to make it in 2022.
Yeah.
He's an 03, so he's 19 at the time. Don't expect it. He's looking good for 26. He really is. All right, so moving into number 29.
Yeah, Matteo Rotaccio. Many of you may have seen when Liverpool picked him up. Everybody got excited. An American headed to Liverpool. David, tell us about this kid.
Yeah, so Matteo Rotaccio. So this kid can play numerous positions. Liverpool uses him out wide. Liverpool uses him at number 10. I personally think he's best as number 8. Matteo, when you look at him, he has the physicality. He's a big and strong kid. He's fast. He can keep off defenders. The English Academy League is like the Premier League. It's abrasive. It's physical. Kids are going to try to muscle you off that ball. They're going in hard challenges. And he fights them right off every time. So the biggest question is, can this kid make it at Liverpool? That's a resounding no. And is that a mark against him? No. He's not going to beat out Fabinho. He's not going to beat out Navi Keita, Jorginho Wijnaldum. Those guys are massive talents. They're some of the best guys in the world. Matteo Rotaccio can make it potentially to a lower level Premier League team. That's a fantastic place to be. This kid's really good. For the USA U20s, he's the most underrated prospect. He is this cycle's version of Joshua Tensio was for the last U20s, or for the U17s. So this kid can really be good in the future. He has the package, he has the skill, he has the size, he has the IQ, and he has the grit. I think this kid's going to be really good. So, all right. Next up.
Yeah, Mauricio Cuevas at LA Galaxy, number 28. I know a lot of Galaxy fans follow, and we're excited to see a number of Galaxy players. So tell us about this guy.
Yeah, so like Leo Sepulveda, the next Brian Cliven kid in the list. Mauricio Cuevas, he is slick. This kid can dribble. When you want to see an attacking fullback, this is it. He can glide up and down that touchline. He can take defenders on. He can skewer them. He can make them look silly out there, like Serginho Dest. The difference between him and Serginho Dest is he's a lot better at crossing the ball. This kid can play dimes on defenders every time. Where he's a little weak, he can do better 1v1. That's why he's not higher. The other thing that I'm kind of worried about is that LA Galaxy also has another pretty special young right back in Julian Araujo. That makes me worried about Mauricio Cuevas. Because if Mauricio doesn't leave, say he goes from LA Galaxy 2 to the first team, he's going to get benched for a while unless Julian Araujo really turns it up and gets those minutes, which unless LA Galaxy want to keep this kid as a winger instead of a right back.
Or if Araujo moves overseas.
Yeah, which fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So Mauricio is, if this kid doesn't start every game for the U20 cycle in 2023, I'm going to personally riot. He's good, people. He's smooth. He attacks well. He's not very big, pretty short, maybe 5'8", pretty skinny. Can be a better defender, but you'll work on that. It's something that develops with time. This kid's going to be a stud. So for the USMNT, he is one to look out for. So Serginho Dest has that position on lock. But the battle for the 2026 backup spot is on. Mauricio is just as big as a chance as other kids do. So I think he can get there.
All right, 27, my guy, Patrick Weah.
Yeah.
We had some news from Minnesota kind of shutting down their academy and some of those guys moving on.
Yeah.
But Patrick's a good player. He's over at St. Louis University. You want to talk a little bit about Patrick?
Yep. So Patrick was the most pro-ready player in the Minnesota United Academy. So everyone thinks of the last name Weah. Patrick plays like George did. Big, fast, strong, physically dominating center forward who's pretty good in the ball. So Patrick is made for the men's game. He's made to be that number 9 who can keep up and just physically tank center backs. When people watched Ayo Akinola pancake the Toronto center, or I forget who he's playing, but everyone has in their head. Patrick Weah did this like 6 times a game against players. The only downside to Patrick Weah was that Minnesota didn't have a U19 team. So Patrick Weah was able to over-rely on his athleticism, which kind of hurt his technical ability a little bit. The other downside to Patrick Weah, and this is something that's going to move him down the list, he signed to St. Louis University, which he was been 16 his entire freshman year. It's not bad. College soccer isn't bad if you're that young. But there's no college soccer this year. So this kid's going to be sitting playing no games for potentially an entire year. It's a major concern. And because he is in college soccer, he can't play in the DA. He has to hope that a USL team maybe picks him up. But that's also a bit of a stretch right now because college soccer is basically in season. So that's something that I look at and I think that's not good. And he also can't go to other MLS clubs because he's from Minnesota. He either has to sign a USL deal, which he has to hope New York Red Bulls do. If he doesn't, he's stuck. And that's a really bad thing.
Yeah, and just for clarity, that is George's nephew and Tim Weah's cousin. Patrick Weah. That is not a coincidence in the names.
No, it's not a coincidence. He's so good. He is.
Yeah. Number 26, we've got Elton Shifamba from Columbus. You want to tell us a little bit about him?
This is probably one of the most hidden talent kids in this group. So the Columbus Crew aren't exactly known as a homegrown factory. They had Will Trapp. They now have Sebastian Berhalter and Abubakar Keita. But for a while, it was basically just Will Trapp. Benny Swanson was a homegrown there, and his career is over. But Elton Shifamba has the perfect mentor for him. This kid, if you looked at his game, it is you take the offensive just precision, the carefulness, the tidiness that Darlington Nagbe has, add it with the defensive prowess of Tyler Adams, and give Tyler Adams better passing. That's Elton Shifamba. So when people think about that and they look at, oh, well, Tyler Adams is at Red Bull Leipzig. He's a guaranteed starter for the USA. Why isn't this kid higher if he's like Tyler Adams but just is a better passer? The reason for that is he's at Columbus. They don't have a USL team. This kid's going to be playing DA again in the fall. This kid has 2 newly signed 6s by Columbus, and one of those 6s, he went out and showed out. He performed. And then the other player that's above him is Darlington Nagbe, who will never drop from that lineup until he retires. So because of that, because of those guys above him, we really need to be hoping that he might make a move to Europe when he turns 18, or that Columbus crew really give this kid a vote of confidence. So that's why he's not higher. This is a kid who won't, for a long time, miss out on the list unless there's an injury.
So you mentioned Shifamba, Cuevas, Caden Clark, of course, Indiana Vasilev, Evan Rotundo. Any other names that you think outside the top 25 that could vault into this list? I know you mentioned most of them, but anybody else we're not talking about, not thinking about that could vault in?
Should we talk about guys not on the list or guys on the list?
Either one. Anyone you think could make the hop.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about one kid who's going to make a skyrocket up the list, but we'll talk about that one after. Guys inside the list who I think realistically in the next year or so could really move up if we're going from the down up. The very first one is going to be Kenan Hott. Like I said, this could answer the question I have about him. The only thing I'm concerned about is that Red Bulls aren't moving youth up as quick as they were. But if they don't move him up, his dad's going to take him and ship him off to Europe where he's going to be just fine. This kid's going to move up the list. The next one, Reed Baker Whiting. Exact same kid as Kenny, except he's in an even more youth-friendly team. He could move up. The only reason he's so low is because he's an 05. Another one, Evan Rotunda. Like I said, this kid has the vision. He has the passing. No one else has. No one else even comes close to it, but he lacks the physicality, the athleticism aspect. Generally, you don't need to be an athletic superstar to make it in the pros. You just need to be good enough. If Shelton can get him that good enough, this is a top 10 player. No question. Other ones, Dante Seeley. He's another kid if you go high. If this kid shows consistency, he brings back that late 2019 form where he was on fire, where he killed it in every game, earned him a U20 call-up, a few 03s. He got a PSV trial where he went and trained 30-19s, did really well. Dominated at the U17 national team level. Dominated in the DA. If he shows consistency with FC Dallas, he's going to move up. Another one, Indiana Vasilev. It all depends next year on what Ashton Villa does. If they continuously keep putting this kid into the first team, it's going to be a big difference. This is a team that's going to have a bigger funding because they're staying in the Premier League. So what they do shows whether this kid is it or he's going to be a Johann Smith, who most fans don't remember, who debuted in the Premier League, had like 2 appearances, and is gone. So when we go from there, Mauricio Cuevas, all depends on what happens with Julio Araujo, or whether Mauricio Cuevas moves to another team. If he stays at LA Galaxy, he's going to move down. He's not beating out Julian Araujo. That's just how it is. Finally, Elton Shifamba. If Columbus can get a USL team that they can sign this kid, if this kid puts on more muscle because he's a smaller kid, like I said, Tyler Adams' clone, basically. If he can put on more muscle, he's ready for MLS. Sebastian Berhalter or Aiden Morris, they can't shine this kid's shoes. He'll push them right out right away. So this is someone that could really vault up the list. So, yeah. So there's going to be more that we'll talk about kids that didn't make the list who are being considered later. And we'll talk about some who could really make a difference.
You ready to move on to the top 25?
Bring it on.
All right. At 25, Italo Jenkins from Atlanta. Is that how you say it?
That is.
All right.
Yeah, so Italo, this is a kid in DA who's really impressed me. So he's a striker out of the 2005 age group at Atlanta United. He's really done well in games. Big thing for him is this kid is a man-child. But at this age group, if you look at a kid who physically dominates, they have to have more than that. They have to have the soccer IQ. If you don't have the soccer IQ and you just physically bully your age group, you bust as a pro every time.
Gotta catch up to you.
Yeah, it catches up eventually. But this kid makes good decisions. He makes good runs. He holds the ball up well. He connects with teammates well. So Italo Jenkins, even though he's in the top 25, he's going to bounce from the list. And the reason for that is the 2005 age group is loaded at striker. Absolutely stacked. You look at Steven Ramirez, LAFC, Robert Wilcott, LAFC, Sergeant Goma, New York Red Bulls. You have, obviously, Italo at Atlanta United. There's a couple other kids who are also really talented. If he can beat those kids out, this kid immediately makes the list again. But he's not going to be on here until that happens. So I think this kid's special. The other downside to him is Atlanta have struggled with homegrowns. Andrew Carlton is probably the saddest bust I've seen in a long time. Now, that also happens because the kid has made some mind-boggling, stupid level mistakes. But they also had Chris Gossen. Chris Gossen was one of the best center mids of the 2000 age group, who is probably our standout group so far. He's in Lithuania right now at a team that I don't even know.
I thought he wasn't even playing soccer, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's depressing. It's so bad. Tony Annan in that that TED talk he did, I talked about a while ago. He even mentioned Atlanta United had no plan for their homegrowns. None. They moved him to the first team, said, "You're done with us. Bye-bye." They learned a little bit, and they're trying to do it with Bello, but Bello didn't show much improvement. George Campbell's starting to show a little bit, and that's why George Campbell might make this list next time, but it's still, you haven't had that success in the area that's mad for soccer and has tons of amazing talents. So there's a couple of questions. Most of them don't have to do with Italo. It has to do with external factors. So that's why he's gonna be in purgatory for a little bit.
Number 24, Daniel Leyva, Seattle.
Yes, Danny. So if you're listening to this pod, you've heard this kid's name.
Yeah.
03 Seattle Sounders. When you look at the technical side, can hit a pass anywhere, can change his body, he's just a god on the ball. Phenomenal. He's a Barcelona type center mid. Just beautiful, beautiful passing. He can dribble past players if need be. He can crunch people in tackles. Really good defensive center mid. His IQ, he reads the game better than the Seattle Sounders players do. I've seen this kid play in person quite a few times with the Sounders first team. He fit right in. So why is this kid so low? The physical side. So like I said with Rotundo, you don't have to be a great athlete. You just have to not be awful.
Mm-hmm.
Danny Leyva is borderline awful. I am a 24-year-old who drank heavily in college and have the endurance and the speed of that. I might be faster than Dan, which is not good, especially when you're trying to make it to the pro level. This was exposed at the U17 World Cup, where he was partnered with a center mid who doesn't dominate the field, doesn't cover that much ground, and Adam Saldana. Our midfield got killed because of it. So that's why he's not higher. If he can develop that speed, he can get faster. He's going to fly up this list. He's going to be a European player. He's going to be a monster talent. He's going to make the U.S. men's national team. But if he doesn't, he's going to be a bang average MLS center mid. That's it. It's like I said, it's boom or bust.
Yeah.
So moving in to another defensive center mid. So I try to stay as unbiased with kids as I can. This is the only one I'll ever have a slight bias for. And this because I'm from the South Bend, Indiana area, and so is number 23, Alan Rodriguez. So Alan Rodriguez is the only hope of my hometown for the pros. But with that being said, this kid has earned his way onto this list. With the USA U15 national team, he was the standout player. He commanded the game. He's a monster on the defense as a center mid. He's a tank in possession. When fans look at Darlington Nagbe, they look at a player who never loses the ball, who always retains it no matter what. Allen's the same way. What's the difference between Allen and Darlington Nagbe? Allen grinds defensively. This kid looks to make those challenges. He loves it. Fantastic player. Just everything you want in your number 6 is there. There's 2 things in his game that are question marks right now. The number 1 is the athleticism. Allen is about 5'6", 5'7", pretty stocky kid. Still has a little bit of baby fat. Now, he's surprisingly fast for his size. But that catches up with him. It's going to hurt his potential. But if he still maintains his quick acceleration, his quick burst speed, this kid's going to make the Fire first team. More importantly than that, this kid's going to go to Europe. He is everything fans wanted in Darlington Nagbe as a 6 and 8 right now and more. So this kid should start every game for the USA 17s. He's potentially their captain. It's a big deal. If he can really, for him, it's just that physical side. The other thing to work on is he's not a big distributor. He retains the ball well. He doesn't look to make those big passes. He's not a kid who looks to hit that 40 to 50-yard ball. If he can do that, the sky's the limit for him. Bundesliga, Premier League, La Liga, it's all possible. So moving on to our next one, Gage Akalu. So this is the first Sporting Kansas City kid in the list. People question me saying you put 2 other Sporting KC kids in here, but not Gianluca Boozio. That is because the potential of Akalu blows away Boozio. Self-described by Sanjeev at USMNT Videos on Twitter as the American Neymar. And it fits. This kid is electric on the ball. Phenomenal dribbler. Glides by players. Silky, has every trick in the bag. Is fast. Is a nightmare for defenders. But like Neymar too, he's a twig. That's why Sporting KC, who values the physical side of the game, haven't moved him up yet like they should. But this is a kid like the other Sporting Kansas City in the list to be named. He still has those physical things. But if I'm Sporting Kansas City, I'm throwing 6 figures at this kid today. You can't lose this kid. There's 3 kids in the academy who should be given this. 2 05s and an 06. They are special. They're difference makers at every level they're at. Gage is one of those for the 2005 national team, the tournament that they did out in Poland. He was the best attacker. He was their goal threat. He was the PK taker. He's just everything you want in a winger. He's everything you want in an attacker. He's also a good number 10. So I think this kid is going to be big. If this kid can put on some muscle and keep being faster than other teammates, he's going to Europe. He's going to have a great career. So the player that I think this kid is similar to is Johannes. Johannes, like this kid, glided by defenders. It's unstoppable. Great shot. Wasn't the biggest kid growing up. Gage is just like that. Gage can put on muscle like Uli has. Gage can keep progressing at the rate he has. He's going to go far. So now on to number 21. Matko Milahevich. I think that's how you say it. This is pretty much the answer to what you want from a kid like Akalu. Matko typically plays out on the left wing. That's where I think he should play. He's super physical. He's super fast, super strong. Amazing dribbler. He's dribbles like players that you see in South America. That flair, that excitement, that just, I want to do this because I can and I know other people can't play like this. Matko was apparently in the U20 camps one of the standouts in practice, but didn't try as much in practice as he would the games. But this kid, he can take on defenders. He can beat them at will. He has a good first touch. He's good passing, good finishing. He just needs to get on the field more with his club and demonstrate that. This is also a kid who's not a dual national. He's a tri-national. He's eligible for Argentina and Croatia. Both are interested in calling this kid up. It's a big deal if you're being scouted by 3 different national teams. So this is one that he's got to make the U20s. Generally, I like to see 6 midfielders be on the team, 2 6s, 2 8s, 2 10s. For the U20s, I'm okay with 5 and then having a 4th winger on the team, just so that way we can keep this kid in.